Hello, this is Shan Chandrasekhar welcoming you to another delightful part of our programming. As part of the Achievers, we featured some of the finest, highly accomplished people from around the world. We're delighted and very honored to welcome to the program an extraordinary personality of an extraordinary stature, a gentleman who has made a great contribution, who is almost described as the father of Indian nation from India. He is none other than His Excellency Honorable Jethmalani. Welcome to the program, sir.
Well, happy to be with you.
And it's a real pleasure, sir, and an honor for us to have you in the show. You're a man of extraordinary stature. There is nobody in the world who hasn't heard about you, whether they are politicians and industrialists or constitutional experts around the world. You have been a guest lecturer, professor in various universities around the world, and it's an absolute honor to have you in Canada because I know we have very pleasant memories because I went to a university in Montreal in which you were one of the visiting professors, namely McGill University. So we are delighted to have you. Welcome again to Toronto.
Thank you, and I'm very happy to be on Canadian soil. I have been here during the emergency, and I have very fond memories of the hospitality that I received in this country. And this was, on my way to the United States, where I got political asylum. And Canada is a place I like to return again and again.
That's wonderful. Well, first of all, our hearty compliments to you. Tell us about the concept of the coalition government, because you were one of the founding members and the executives of the BJP, the party, in the early days, in 1977 during the period, but in 1985 you actually withdrew, and then you went back and stood as an independent candidate and you won, and now you are officially as a minister, but as an independent candidate. Tell me about your involvement with the BJP and why did you choose to do the independent route?
Well, when the BJP came into existence, you will recall that it was the old Janata Party which divided. The Janata Party which had come into existence in 1977. Then some people created dissensions within the party, and the so-called old Jansangh element was more or less outlawed from the Janata Party, and that element became the Bharatiya Janata Party. Now, I was not a member of the Jansangh at any time, but when this partition of the Janata Party took place, I had to make a decision whether I remain with the rump of the Janata Party or I joined the BJP. I think ultimately I took a decision on the basis of who was right and who was wrong in this issue of dividing the Janata Party and bringing the Janata government to an end. And I thought that comparatively, there were more honest people, people of greater statesmanship and patriotism on this side. And that is how I joined the BJP. And I was their first All India Vice President. We carried on for quite some time. And of course, I was a practicing lawyer at the same time, because we were in the opposition, so there was no restriction on my practice. And then came the Mrs. Gandhi's assassination and the trial of the accused, and 3 of them had been sentenced to death. And we have a rule in India that if a person is sentenced to death, he has the right to make a choice of the counsel who will represent him in the appeal. And the High Court conveys the wishes of the convict to the lawyer. And though this process comes as a kind of a request to the lawyer, but it is practice, it is treated as a command. And so that's how the Delhi High Court asked me to appear for these 2 convicts. And not that I had read anything about the case except from the newspapers. They had already been sentenced to death. So I took up this case, and agreed to argue it in the High Court. And somehow, I don't know what, I'm sorry to say that, something went wrong with the BJP leadership at that time. When they heard that I had taken up this case, they asked me to resign my vice presidentship. And instead of resigning only the vice presidentship, I resigned from the party. And I have never since joined that party again. But I have always been nearer to that party. I didn't leave that party. I was made to leave the party.
I see. It's interesting. In fact, that's a very high-profile case, in fact, that you're talking about. I'm fascinated by that from an academic point of view. I'll come back to that a little later during the interview. But I'd like to find out, staying on the coalition government, India has seen now almost 3 different governments. It also shows the maturity of the voting masses. Millions of people go to the polls and they are able to elect a democratic government. But tell me about the validity of a coalition government and the prognosis.
There are 2 kinds of coalition governments. One is the type which arises because the various parties who constitute the coalition were in a pre-election alliance, so that they were bound by the promises, mutual promises that they had made to one another, that after we form the government or we come into power, we will share power and share power in a particular manner or proportion or whatever you call it. The other kind of coalition government is one which arises spontaneously as a response to the electoral verdict. See, if the electors do not give a majority to any particular party, you don't have a re-election. You try to form a government. Then necessarily you try to resolve your disagreements, you try to round off corners, and see if you can work out a common agenda on which you can work for the next 4 or 5 years. So this is the response to a fractured verdict. And the present coalition government is of the second kind. They were not in a pre-poll alliance, except we had a pre-poll alliance, for example, with the ADMK of Jayalalitha, but not so with every other coalition partner. So the rest of the partners have come together. And coalition governments are intrinsically, according to me, better governments, because coalition government rules by compromise, rules by reasoning and argument. A government which has a very strong majority in the parliament to support it tends to be an autocratic form of government, tends to ride roughshod over other people's objections and their desires, their inhibitions, doesn't take into account, doesn't give at least due weight to the opinions and aspirations of others. Not so with a coalition government. A coalition government is a more reasonable and a responsive government, therefore probably a more democratic form of government. But the weakness of a coalition government is also inherent in the whole process, because each coalition partner tries to draw the maximum advantage in the form of sharing power. And B, at every step, the coalition partner views every decision to be taken from the point of view of its own ultimate electoral interests. Will it be consonant with its own electoral prospects if it were to fight an election alone in the future?
I see.
Now this creates an inherent weakness. This creates a lot of conflict of opinion and, in fact, conflict of interest. But on the whole, I think it balances itself out. A coalition form of government is a good form of government. It requires character, it requires reasonableness, and it requires a certain amount of commitment to the common goal and a sacrifice of your own individual self-interest.
You've got an incredible background in the field of law. I mean, you're one of the worldwide renowned constitutional experts. You're highly respected by the legal community around the world. And you yourself went through some very challenging times in the field of constitutional law yourself. Tell us a bit about that period, because there was a very high-profile period in the Indian subcontinent during the state of emergency, and the controversial, the radical decisions that you had to undertake, the political asylum. Tell us a little bit about that side of it.
It's a long story, In fact, I have lived with India's constitution. I am a student of constitutional law. I have a master's degree from Bombay University in constitutional law.
Right.
And I have made a very deep study of the Indian constitution. And there is not a single decided case which I have not studied with great care. Then I have taught constitutional law During the emergency, I have taught constitutional law in the United States at the Wayne State University here in Michigan. But my whole legal career starts with constitutional battles. You know, when in 1948 I came to India as a refugee, and I was just 24 years of age at that time. And when we came from Sindh, and we Sindhis, you know, we used to write our Sindhi language in the Arabic Sindhi script, which looks like Urdu or Arabic or Persian. And we had two strong governments in India. One at the center was Jethmalani Nehru, and in Bombay it was Morarji Desai. Both very strong-headed and politicians with tremendous public clout. So they decided that the Sindhis must hereafter write the Sindhi language in the Devanagari script. In other words, they must abandon the Arabic Sindhi script. Now, this was very harsh on us. No language can survive without a script. If you change the script, you have changed the language. And so we Sindhis didn't like this decision. At least some of us didn't, except those who were in the Congress and were allied to the Congress. But most of the Sindhis were not congressmen. They came to me, and you know, at that time the Constitution had just been promulgated. And in those days, the copy of the Constitution used to cost 8 annas. You know. And I was a young lawyer. I took this matter to the Bombay High Court. And it was a resounding constitutional battle. And I won the case.
Glad.
And ever since then, all schools in India allow Sindhis to learn the Sindhi in their original Arabic Sindhi script.
That's fascinating.
Now, this is how I started. Though I have a reputation for being a criminal lawyer, but you know, these reputations attached to you because criminal law is a field which attracts a lot of public attention. Every time I appear in a criminal case,
especially if it's a high-profile case.
If it's a high-profile case, you know, you get that reputation that he's a criminal lawyer. But I feel much more at home in a constitutional court than in a normal criminal court. And the constitutional battles which you fight, they don't get so well known. So therefore, my role as a constitutional lawyer is normally forgotten. And my real battles started when Mrs. Gandhi started tinkering with the judiciary. At that time, I was the chairman of the Bar Council of India. And I have a record there because nobody has been the chairman of the Bar Council of India for as many terms as I have been. So when Mrs. Gandhi tried to tinker with the judiciary, I protested. And I remember having written an article in the Bar Journal at that time, which I used to edit, that ultimately an incorruptible and independent judge is required by the opposition, not by the ruling party. And if Mrs. Gandhi wants to have the judiciary on her side and doesn't want an independent judiciary, to me it is obvious that she has decided to become the permanent ruling party of the country and that she has no intention of ever becoming the opposition. And I said, my farsightedness today tells me that we are in for a dictatorship and democracy is soon going to be destroyed. And that was almost prophetic. It turned out to be right. And within a couple of years, we had that inglorious period of emergency when our democracy virtually slipped out of our hands and the human rights of citizens were gone. The judiciary caved in to political pressures. And at that time, I was invited to address a meeting of the Kerala Bar, State Bar. They were holding their annual celebrations.
And at that time, Kerala was still a communist government at that time?
Yes. It was a Congress government. Karunakaran was the chief minister.
I see.
And this was a meeting which was held in Palghat during the emergency. And I remember that I was invited to go and address it in my capacity as the chairman of the All India Bar Council. And I attacked the emergency, and I attacked Mrs. Gandhi, and I attacked her son Sanjay, and talked of his corruption and other things. And I could see that half the crowd quietly disappeared because they knew that the district magistrate and the police officers were all present at this conference. And the emergency was a time when you are not supposed to speak at all. So, but I finished my speech, and that very afternoon I left. And then I had gone away to Madras to argue some case when I was told that a warrant had been issued for my arrest. But all dictatorships are also terribly incompetent. I mean, that's the redeeming feature of all dictatorships. So, by the time they decided to issue a warrant and try and execute that warrant, I had already left Kerala. So I remember that the district magistrate of Palghat telephoned to the commissioner of police in Bombay that we have a warrant here for Mr. Jethmalani's arrest, and please arrest him. Now, I have not been a criminal lawyer in vain, so at least I knew the commissioner of police. So the commissioner of police was very friendly, and he told the district magistrate of Palghat, listen, Chama, I am not going to arrest a lawyer of Mr. Jethmalani's caliber, and on a telephone message, I don't even know whether I am talking to the district magistrate of Palghat. So you better come and bring your warrant here, and then we will execute it for you. In the meantime, I came to know about it. They telephoned to my wife called me. Then 300 lawyers went to a judge of the Bombay High Court, and the Bombay High Court issued an injunction restraining the government from executing their warrant. Now that was the time when the high courts were still alive to liberty and the concerns of liberty, and were doing their best in spite of the draconian laws to protect liberty and find out loopholes in the law and how to frustrate these attempts to sort of impose this kind of slavery on people. And about 9 high courts in India had come to the conclusion that the emergency notwithstanding, there were still certain loopholes in the law, and the judges could interfere and protect liberty of individual citizens. Then the government went to the Supreme Court, and unfortunately the Supreme Court caved in. I don't know to what pressures they caved in. By a majority of 4-1, they decided, and that is known as the disgraceful Jabalpur case. They decided that so long as the emergency lasts, the courts are utterly powerless to prevent invasion of liberty. In fact, one of the extreme examples given, and which is a disgrace to the Indian judicial system of that time, that it was argued that even if, without any justification, a person is starved to death or he is stoned to death in custody, the courts can't interfere.
My God.
So that judgment was delivered on the 28th of April, 1976 in the morning. And on that night, I was on a plane out of India, and I reached Canada, and I was escorted to the plane in Bombay by no other person than the Deputy Commissioner of Police. And I landed in Canada on my way to the United States to seek political asylum. And I gave evidence before the Committee on Human Rights of the US Senate. And I got political asylum here in the United States, and
It was extraordinary at that time, I remember. Now that you have a tremendous role to play, back in the country where they needed you most, I should say. So it's very fortunate that you're there holding a cabinet position. Having said that, we're all sad to hear stories of human rights violation. Now, we don't know to what extent, how much truth is there behind them, or to what extent they are exaggerated.
India is committed to the maintenance of a human rights regime. Our constitution guarantees those rights. And our very vigorously independent and honest judiciary enforces those rights. In addition, we have created a Human Rights Commission, which has a statutory basis. It has got what we call teeth. And it is presided over by one of the most honest and and very competent ex-chief justices of India, Mr. Justice Venkat Chalaya. And they are doing an excellent job. I mean, you have to just write a postcard and say that here is the case of human rights violation. And the commission goes into it minutely, gets justice for those who are the victims of violations, and also it recommends proper legal action to be taken against those who indulge in these violations. I think we have an inimitable, unbeatable record of human rights respect and enforcement. Now, only yesterday we came to know that in the case of these New Zealand guys who have been, chaps who have been killed in Orissa,
Right.
the killers are Christians. Christians have been arrested. Now you see, until the truth is discovered, you see the kind of propaganda that is built up, the kind of bad publicity that the government of India receives. Why? I want to know a country in which Christians have rose to the highest positions in India. They have become Supreme Court justices, they become Chief Justices, they are in the army, they are in our educational institutions, they are everywhere. Why should India suddenly decide to rape a couple of nuns or to kill a couple of Christians? What for? A country in which Mother Teresa was almost worshipped as a goddess.
Correct.
I'm surprised that she has not yet passed into the Hindu pantheon. Why? Now, first of all, it's a pure accident that the two women who were raped were nuns and that these two persons were killed who happened to be Christians. Question is, it's not government policy. The government is not behind it, a political party is not behind it, and these crimes are being investigated and people have been arrested, and I'm quite sure that they will be brought to justice provided there is adequate evidence against them. So it is wholly wrong to say that Christians are being attacked. Some people are being attacked as people are attacked in every country. A mad Israeli from Australia, a Jew, traveled all the way to Israel, went into Israel, and he just hacked down a few Palestinians. But that doesn't make it Israeli policy. That doesn't mean that they were out to just kill innocent Palestinians. So all this is absolute nonsense, that India has anything to do with creating a war against Christianity. I mean, I know that there has been some kind of hostility between Hindus and Muslims. But what is this? Hindu and Christian hostility doesn't exist in any shape or form.
You've been very actively involved within the Sikh community, and you're on a charitable trust. In fact, you've done a lot of philanthropic work as well. Tell us a bit about your involvement in your...
Look, I must tell you about the Hindus from the province of Sindh in Pakistan.
Right.
Practically all Hindus there are also Sikhs, except that we do not have the 5 kakas or Ks as they call them, the kirpan,
Right.
and, the Ks, the hair, and the comb, and kacha, and we don't do these kind of things. These external indicia of Sikhism we don't wear. But we are all worshippers of Guru Nanak and the Guru Granth Sahib.
Right.
So therefore, Sindh is a place where Hinduism and Sikhism were all so inextricably intertwined that you couldn't separate the two. Every Hindu temple would have the Guru Granth Sahib. So therefore, in a sense, you might say that I am a Sikh. But it is my concern for human rights that brought me into intimate relationship with the Sikhs. What happened after Indira Gandhi's assassination was quite a disgrace. I mean, it is true that she was brutally murdered. But the murder was not committed by the whole community. There were two hotheads who decided to avenge an insult to the Golden Temple. I mean, Golden Temple to them is what Makkah is to the Muslims.
Sure.
Now, how many people have been killed who have tried to defile the Kaaba? So these hotheads decided that she was the cause of the desecration of the Golden Temple. After all, it has never happened that tanks have gone into a temple and sort of into a gurdwara and mowed down 1,500 people. So then those two persons who killed, they were killing out of this religious motivation. And one doesn't approve of this kind of a murder. But nevertheless, they were acting out of a strange, shall we say, almost an indefensible religious impulse. Both of them, after having committed the deed, laid down their arms. They threw them. One was actually taken charge of. Both were taken charge of. But one was taken charge of and kept in a room and killed in cold blood. Now this is murder. If you have a prisoner in custody, you don't shoot him down, you try him. And till today, that murder has not been investigated. The law is law. I mean, if you are investigating the murder of Mrs. Gandhi, you must also investigate the murder of that person. All right, all this is understandable, but what happened to that program which started? The indiscriminate killing of, and I have been a witness to what happened, that this literally fires were lit in which Sikhs were caught hold of and thrown alive. I mean, this will shock anybody's conscience. And how many people? About 3,000 to 4,000 people were killed in the streets of Delhi with that Rajiv Gandhi looking on. And all that he said was that, that when a big tree falls, the earth is bound to shake.
Very sad.
Sad. And ever since then, I have been in the rescue movement. I went there, I went to the places where these Sikhs were lying injured. I have rescued some of them, taken some to hospital, organized so much of relief work for them. And then I decided that I will fight this case. But I told you that I didn't fight the case for money.
Yeah.
I was asked by the High Court to look after two persons who wanted my legal.
Right.
And I was vindicated. The Supreme Court held that one of them was wrongly convicted. And it was a false case, the Supreme Court found. And the Supreme Court acquitted one of the accused. And the other accused, who should have been also let off by the Supreme Court, but somehow their judicial acumen deserted them after they decided to acquit one. I mean, they probably were afraid of acquitting the other. But the one whom they decided to convict was probably less guilty than the other one, whom they let off. Millions of petitions went to the President of India that even this person is innocent and he should be pardoned. It was the result of my advocacy and my arguments, which were published in all the newspapers. And people who were anti-Sikh also sent petitions to the President that this man deserves to be let off. I personally appealed to Rajiv Gandhi. I said, your mother won't like an innocent man to be hanged. Her soul will disapprove of it. But he just didn't listen. And according to me, a totally innocent man was sent to the gallows. And you see, nature has, there is some law of retribution. I still think Rajiv suffered for it.
Well, those are most traumatic situations and extraordinarily dramatic situations, I would say, in the history of India. We would now move on to something that's very current, that's looking very positive as far as India's presence and the floating of the resurgence of the bonds that have been floated through the State Bank of India, and over $4 billion, that's a lot of money that has been raised. Tell me about the impact of this. How effective is this money going to be utilized by the government of India? What accountability is there?
I must tell you that it has come as a very, very great help. But speaking for myself, I am a little dissatisfied with the amount that has come in. And I believe that there's tremendous amount of wealth with our non-resident Indians abroad. And 4.2 billion is just a pittance.
It's interesting you said that, sir. Actually, the United States population alone of the non-resident Indian group, 92% have college degrees. 70% have more than 2 degrees. Average net worth is $212,000 per person for over 1.2 million people. And average income per person is almost double of the average American income. So there's an enormous purchasing power that's there. But one of the concerns with them is that the safety of these investments in India. It's not just the returns that people are concerned about. It's to see, how safe are these investments, and also people are interested in seeing what good returns are going to be coming out on a business basis.
I must tell you one thing, that India has an impeccable record of honoring its international obligations. At no time, in the worst of times when India has been financially very badly off, we have never reneged on our international obligations to make payments. In fact, when we borrowed money, we took our gold from India and brought it out and pledged it and then took the money. And we have always paid before the due date. And this is a record of which every Indian has to be proud. And today I claim that we have brought into existence a government which is scam-free. Nobody can accuse Atal Bihari or L.K. Advani of being corrupt people who have ever put their hand in a poor man's pocket and stolen even a single rupee. So I think the money is absolutely safe. The government of India's obligations cannot possibly be written off by anybody. They are binding even on successive governments. So even if a new government comes into power, the bond of the government of India remains as a valid enforceable bond. And all these policies which we have adopted now are, in a sense, a fulfillment of our international obligations to the WTO, to the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. So this whole economic process is totally irreversible, and no NRI has the slightest reason for the slightest apprehension that something will go wrong with his investment.
The first generation immigrants, who left India and came here, which you yourself have seen in the United States through your own experience, the basic instinctual needs are all now taken care of. The people who came in here first, many of them thought that they'd be here for a while, earn some money and go back home. Home means back to India. But now they have realized that they've put their roots in here, their kids have been born here, they grew up here, they're going to universities here. And so from the basic needs of a Chevy Impala and a color TV and a house now, there's a tremendous amount of disposable income available. A lot of these people are interested, for instance, in real estate in India. But there is some concerns about real estate because there's a tendency for them to think that if you become a landlord in India or become a real estate investor, the laws are slated towards the tenant, really, rather than the real estate owner. Can you comment on that?
Well, that has been, I think, substantially true. And that is why we have taken care of it. For example, I advised the Delhi government, and in Delhi today, all construction, future construction, and future tenancies are totally free from rent control.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, this is retrospective. From 1st of December 1988, every new tenancy and every new premises, there is no rent control of any kind. So that you can evict your tenant whenever you like. It is true that if a tenant refuses to deliver possession, you probably have to go to court. And the court process is somewhat dilatory. But we are trying to tighten up that too, and we are trying to create some kind of understanding amongst the judges themselves that unless you are prepared to take some harsh decisions, which may seem to be sometimes cruel against the tenant and occupation, you will destroy the impetus for creating tenements which cater to the needs of the tenants. And all this scarcity is created because people refuse to build. And people refuse to build because they can't get possession whenever they want it for themselves. Mm-hmm. So this is a vicious circle. And therefore we have to sensitize our judges so that the judicial process becomes a little more expeditious and effective. And we are trying to do that, but now there is no rent control on future construction. And so anybody, any construction that you come and make anew for the first time, you are absolutely safe.
Coming to a lighter side, sir, as you know, you yourself represent one of the largest democracies in the world, and that democracy is well reflected in this part of the world here in Canada, the United States, and the Caribbean. We have an Indian community which is truly multilingual. They are truly multi-religious. We've got a community that is composed of Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Zoroastrians, Buddhists, Jains, and Jews. We have a community that speaks Hindi, Urdu, Punjabi, Gujarati, Sindhi, Bengali, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada, various languages. And yet they've all come under a common umbrella in terms of a composition of a South Asian community in Canada, United States, and the Caribbean. We want some words of greetings from you to our community, sir.
Well, I think I admire this kind of coming together of people. But I have also discovered that our Indian friends do bring their Indian dissensions here into Canada and the United States. And I hope they will put an end to this kind of a thing. And the world has now shrunk into a small town, and people should carry these small little distinctions which they have back home into these countries where they settle down. Is a little regrettable. So when you tell me that they have come down under one umbrella and they now function as one kind of a South Asian entity, to my mind it's a step in the right direction, and my hat's off to them.
Wonderful. Sir, you've had a chance to also see a bit of our broadcast facilities, our 21st licensed 24-hour television channel. What are your comments?
Well, I think you are doing a great job, not for yourself, but you are really doing a great job for the community, and I must tell you that I admire you as a successful Indian, and you are doing a great job for the country back home, and we have reason to be grateful to you, and I wish you success, and I wish you to rise from the present success to greater success and to still greater success.
Sir, it's an absolute honor for us to have you in the studio, and it's a pleasure. And
well, I'm almost provoked to imitate the gentleman you talked about.
I'll have to keep that joke and share that with the people later on. It's an absolute honor having you in the program with us, sir.
My pleasure. I've enjoyed talking to you, really.
We would look forward to having you back very, very soon.
Thank you.